Eagles traveled to the left coast to meet a surprising Rams team in Los Angeles. But we ask, is the defense okay? Well, we'll ask the man himself and do some other quick hits with Sal Paolantonio. Sean Green joins us to talk Eagles, Rams, and Cowboys 49ers. Justin Bruni on whether this might be a Bengal breakout Sunday. And Gary Myers joins to talk about those New York football giants. It's all right now on This Week in Pro Football.
It's time for This Week in Pro Football, a deep dive into the key issues and marquee matchups in the National Football League. For the next 60 minutes, we invite you to sit back or lean in with host Pat Callahan as we preview the week's Eagles matchup, big games, breaking stories, and all news NFL. It's This Week in Pro Football, right now on JAKIB Media Sports.
Hello, everybody. Pat Callahan joining you for week number 5 of This Week in Pro Football, the National Football League, here on JAKIB Media, JAKIB Sports. Please give me a follow here on my X account at TWIPF Pat. You can follow the network at JAKIB, JAKIB Sports, as we present for the next 75 minutes or so a preview of week number 5 in the National Football League and a sneak peek back at week number 4. The Philadelphia Eagles playing a little second fiddle this week to the Phillies. Phillies have kind of taken over the town. They sweep the Miami Marlins, but maybe a good week for the Eagles to get out of town. They go about as far out of town as you can go in this country, out to Los Angeles to meet a Ram team where I was talking with Sal and with Xander before the show about how this was probably the most definitive W I had on the Eagles schedule back in August. Now, all of a sudden, Eagles only a 4.5-point favorite in the game against that Ram team that has caught everybody by surprise with how competitive they are being each and every week. So maybe a little bit of a trap game for Philadelphia. I don't know, but it's a tougher game certainly than it looked at the start of the season. Xander, why don't we bring up the week 4 standings? And you can see here, ladies and gentlemen, Philadelphia right now, one of 2 unbeaten teams in the National Football League. San Francisco, the other. Those teams will collide later on this season here in Philadelphia. Dallas gets back on the winning track against the New England Patriots. I intend to talk to Sal about that in a little while, those Patriots. And Washington put up a good fight. There's something about the Commanders, or formerly the Redskins, when they come to Philadelphia. They play hard. And I'm a little surprised, quite frankly, that Riverboat Ron didn't go for 2 there at the end of that game. I think, obviously, with hindsight, he should have done it. But it might have been the time to do that and get out of there with a shocking win. But the Commanders gave the Eagles all they could handle in that game last Sunday. NFC South, like I said, I don't really care about. I'm not buying Tampa Bay at 3-1. I'm just not doing it. I'm not buying Baker Mayfield. Detroit, the Lions sitting at 3-1, playing well, playing good football. Green Bay stumbling a little bit. The Lions went into Green Bay, won that game. 2 in a row for Green Bay for Detroit in Lambeau. And out west, I mentioned San Francisco, clearly the class of the NFC West. In the AFC, Buffalo took care of business with Miami, but Buffalo's good at taking care of business in September and October. We'll see what happens come January, but the Bills put a 48-point number on Miami last week in Buffalo. Buffalo right now clearly the better team in that division. AFC South, nobody cares. The AFC North, not quite as strong as it appeared at the start of the season. Cincinnati really struggling. 27-3, they are basically whitewashed by a moribund Tennessee team. Bengals, a lot of issues, but then they too go out west to face Arizona, and that could be a get-well game for the Bengals. And the AFC West, Kansas City did not look good. Patrick Mahomes was clearly, you notice his throwing motion on a couple passes, almost like he was trying to place the ball. Looked kind of odd. Chiefs were not on their A game, but it was still enough to beat the Jets with the help of some, I think, some rather tough officiating calls. But the Chiefs sit at 3-1. I don't think anyone's really going to threaten them in that division. And let's take a look at the Week 5 schedule. It's not a great schedule, ladies and gentlemen, right now in for the NFL for week number 5. Another London game, Buffalo a home game. Thank you very much from all the Buffalo fans who loyally support that team for taking a home game away from the Bills so they could play the Jaguars 2,000 miles away in London. The rest of the games, I tell you, there's not many good ones. 1 o'clock games are, I think, the Giants go to Miami, God forbid, and so there are really not a lot of good games on at all at the 1 o'clock. 4 o'clock, Philadelphia at the Rams. Chiefs and Vikings, hopefully be a high-scoring game. Kirk Cousins owner. Should be a high-scoring game there. And then the Sunday night game, Dallas at San Francisco. I don't think Dallas is playing that well offensively, and I think that's going to be a trouble game for the Cowboys. That's not a good place for them, Santa Clara. I think the 49ers, who are a nasty team, are going to beat Dallas up. Monday night, the Packers should be able to handle the Raiders. So that's your Week 5 schedule. Like I said, not too many good games at all on it. So it's supposed to be a nice day Sunday. Maybe you got some other stuff you could do, but and wait till 4 o'clock for Eagles and the Rams. That's it. But the game right now, as I said, looks a lot more interesting than it did a couple of months ago. And Philadelphia's got a little oil leaking here. Why don't we bring on my colleague here, Sal Paolantonio, the senior correspondent from ESPN, noted author, the author of Philly Special, and the guy who's going to do the analyst call Sunday in Pittsburgh for Ravens Steelers. Sal, how you doing?
Oh, Pat, I'm doing great. And Week 5 is a fascinating week in the National Football League. You got 4 weeks in the books. You know, that quarter poll is when coaches really start to self-scout and look at their teams and see what they need. I think the Eagles obviously thought, okay, we need help in the secondary. I mean, Bradley Roby, I've always liked him. I think he's a physical player who's got some traits that will help the Eagles defense for sure. I don't understand why they didn't pick him up prior to the game against Washington, but the James Bradbury experiment in the slot is not working.
Yeah. Well, you and I were joking earlier about slinging Sammy Howell and how he had a heck of a game against Philadelphia right up until the last play of the game. And as you pointed out to me, the Commanders with 5 50-plus yard scoring drives. The Eagles secondary clearly is not playing that well. Now, I don't want to say that that's something that's intrinsic. I guess it can be fixed, but that's not a quick fix, is it?
Well, I hate to do this to people who follow this team, but it was very similar to what happened in the Super Bowl. They couldn't get Patrick Mahomes off the field, and they couldn't get Sam Howell off the field. I mean, they made Sam Howell look like Sammy Baugh, as you just mentioned, alluded to. 75 yards, 68 yards, 56 yards, 65 yards, and 64 yards scoring drives.
Yeah.
That defense was gassed. I was on the sideline in the fourth quarter waiting to go on the field to do interviews, and I tell you, Reed Blankenship is a warrior. Fletcher Cox, at his age, the job that he did, considering now he's got a back injury, I don't know what his status is going to be for Sunday against the Rams, but that defense went through a lot in that football game physically. They were shorthanded, and Bradley Roby can't get in an Eagles uniform fast enough for my taste.
Let me ask you this, Sal. You had mentioned one other thing to me this morning, and I want to know if you think maybe this has something to do with it. The Eagles appear to have, to use a baseball analogy, the Eagles appear to have Jalen Hurts on what I'll call a run count, whereas last year he was their primary running threat. This year it's much more selective, the number of times he carries the ball, and there haven't been any of those electric running plays. Could his not running the ball be lessening the Eagles' time of possession and the defense is out on the field more?
There's no question about that. Nevertheless, even with Jalen Hurts not running as much as he did last year through the first 4 weeks, the Eagles lead the NFL in rushing attempts.
Right.
They are number one. Jalen Hurts alluded to the problem after the game against Washington. He said, we've got to convert on third down, and we've got to do a better job in the red zone. He said, we're not having this conversation if we score touchdowns in the red zone. I mean, right now, Jake Elliott is the MVP of the team.
Right. Yeah, I know. You're right. Elliott seems to be kicking 3 field goals a week. But the defense, back to the defense now, Sal, 27th in passing yards allowed. They've given up 9 touchdowns in 4 games. Now they're looking at a team that's 4th in the NFL in total offense, which is a surprise to everybody. Are there some matchup problems that you see Sunday?
I do. I think Pua Nakua is for real. He has the most catches and the most yards in the first 4 games of any wide receiver in NFL history. Okay, we're talking about Michael Irvin and Jerry Rice and Larry Fitzgerald, and so he's got the most. They throw the ball a lot because they haven't got much of a defense. They haven't been scoring much, Pat. They do have a lot of passing yards,
right?
But they're not a high-scoring team. I think that's one of the reasons why Vegas has the Eagles favored in this football game. But I think this is a tough out for them. This has been a brutal stretch for the Eagles. Brutal. You got to start on the road in New England, short week, and play your home opener on Thursday night. Then you go to Monday Night Football, then another short week, a 1 o'clock game against Washington.
Right.
They have the toughest remaining schedule in the NFL, the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah.
So if they were to happen to lose on Sunday, I'm not predicting yet that they will lose the game, but if they were to happen to lose, it would not be the end of the world because it will give them a chance to regroup and then come back on the East Coast and play a Jets team that they should manhandle the following week.
Right. Jets. Then after that, Miami. And then it does, as you point out, then the schedule starts to thicken up a lot.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it really does. When we talk about the Rams after the break, I'll give you some numbers that suggest to me why Las Vegas has the Eagles as the betting favorite, despite some of the matchup problems that the Rams present.
Okay. All right. Look forward to doing that. We're going to do some quick hits with Sal Pal going around the NFL. All of that coming up next on This Week in Pro Football.
Celebrate your victories in style at Spring Mill Country Club. From Eagles wins to baby showers, weddings to birthdays, our picturesque venue is ready to host your special events. Make memories that last a lifetime in our stunning surroundings. Call Spring Mill today at 215-675-6000 and elevate your next event to unforgettable heights. Contact us now to book 215-675-6000.
John Kennedy Ford. Their reputation sounded too good to be true, so my partner and I decided to do a little digging.
They know we can see them, right?
We could get them a great deal if they just come inside.
They made us. Run! Uncovering a better car buying experience is easy at John Kennedy Ford. Enjoy your ride.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let JAKIB Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call JAKIB Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
All right, welcome back This Week in Pro Football. Pat Callahan, joined by the great Sal Paolantonio. Sal, great to have you on as always. And we look ahead now to this game Sunday, Philadelphia at Los Angeles. You mentioned before the break just some knowledge you want to impart there about the Rams and what kind of a matchup Philadelphia has to deal with.
Well, I think the matchup is Pua Nakua. I mean, this guy is impossible to cover right now, and he's a great slot receiver who runs terrific routes. He's got terrific hands, and he's big and physical.
Yes.
So he is not Cooper Kupp. He's more Julian Edelman. Although Kupp is obviously a terrific player. But this is a tough passing offense. And if they get into a shootout with the Rams, they're going to have a problem. And here's the biggest thing. Why has Vegas got them favored in this game? Jalen Hurts has won 10 straight road games. 10 straight. That is hard to do in the National Football League.
That's well over a season. You're right.
It's right, Pat? It's well over a season. And the other thing is Matthew Stafford, here's an inside number, is 11-12 against the spread as a home dog. For some reason, when he's a home dog, he does not play well, and his team loses.
Yeah.
It's an odd thing, but the Eagles are so banged up in the defense, and they've had such a tough road. This is going to be a close game, Pat.
Now, the thing about Stafford, Sal, now that you mentioned that, of course, my knee-jerk reaction is because they're a home dog, because the team they're playing is better than they are. And throughout his career, let's face it, Stafford has not been able to be the difference maker, except for that one year when they won the Super Bowl. He was the difference maker that year. Now, but don't you think there's a qualitative advantage the Eagles have, their defensive line versus the Rams' offensive line?
It is. It depends on whether Fletcher Cox is playing and 100%. But yeah, I look at Jalen Carter. He's now, in terms of quarterback pressures, he's fifth in the league as a rookie. And quarterback pressures when double teamed, he's only behind Micah Parsons as a rookie in his first 4 games.
Right.
So Jalen Carter is playing at a super explosive high level, and he's well on his way to, knock on wood, defensive rookie of the year. So he's without a doubt. But, Hassan Reddick has had problems with that thumb in a cast. And they play that 5-down, 2-linebacker deal so that Reed Blankenship has to play so many different positions on the field. And, he made 2 game-saving plays in overtime against Washington, one on one side of the field and then the other when Terry McLaurin stepped on his arm.
Oh, yeah.
And he's playing with bad ribs. Yeah. This guy's a warrior, but they put a lot on him.
That's Sal. It's a game now that you mention it, which could feature the defensive rookie of the year and the offensive rookie of the year in the same game. Now, the Eagles' passing game against the Rams secondary, A.J. Brown was a man among men last week. Do the Rams have anybody in that secondary that's going to be able to keep up with this guy?
I don't think so. I really don't. But if I'm Philadelphia, I'm just going to control the clock. I'm going to keep Matthew Stafford off the field.
Right.
I'm going to control the clock, and I'm going to control the line of scrimmage and control field position. It'll be a lot like when the Eagles in 2017 went out to play the Chargers in that soccer stadium, and they used LeGarrette Blount to just bludgeon the Chargers defense. It'll be a lot like that game.
Okay. All right. Well, that's something to look forward to with that game. Philadelphia against Los Angeles. Well, hopefully it's a good game. But I do like the Eagles here. I like them -4.5. The Eagles haven't really played I'll say this, they haven't really played a 2022 game yet. I think it's coming, Sal, one of these weeks. They're going to put everything together. It could be. I
thought the game against Tampa, he had 2 interceptions, but I thought the game. Listen, this team has fought through tremendous adversity. Tremendous. When you consider all the injuries they've had in the secondary. Playing against Belichick week 1, desperate Patriots. Short week, desperate Minnesota. Monday Night Football, hot hand and Baker Mayfield. Short week, again, injuries in their secondary. They have really fought through some adversity in this football team. Yep.
4-0. Not too many teams are, but all right, we're talking with Sal Paolantonio here this week in Pro Football, presented by Kennedy Ford and Sal, presented by the good folks at First Bank in New Jersey. All right, Sal, let's do some quick hits around the National Football League. And, of course, you gave me the segue. You mentioned Bill Belichick. New England was embarrassed Sunday against Dallas, and most of it centered around their quarterback, who clearly, Sal, I think is just not an NFL caliber, or I have great doubts about his ability to rise to the tenor of a true NFL quarterback. But here's my question, though, for you, not about Mac Jones. Has Bill Belichick been figured out? Has the magic Belichick box now been emptied out? And he's just right now an NFL coach.
Well, he was the beneficiary of the greatest quarterback of all time, and he hasn't figured out a succession plan. It's like that show on HBO. They haven't gotten a succession plan. It's been a mess.
Right.
What they did last year to that poor young man, Mac Jones, with this, offensive coordinator du jour was a disaster.
Right.
And he just doesn't have the talent around him, and their offensive line has been hurt. So to me, I'm not going to pile on Mac Jones. I'll say this: when you look at Bill Belichick, he needs 18 wins to get to Don Shula.
Right.
That looks like it's going to happen maybe in 3 years. Is Robert Kraft going to wait 3 more years of this?
I don't know about that, Sal, because I think you're right. I think it could take 3 years. That team, much like the Giants, they have no talent at wide receiver. And so they have a weak-arm quarterback and no talent at wide receiver. Other than that, they can really light it up. So I think there's trouble in New England.
Yes.
Dallas at San Francisco Sunday. I mentioned in the open to this show, I think the Cowboys are in trouble here. I think the 49ers are a nasty team, and they like to beat you up. And speaking of quarterbacks, Dak Prescott has been, in my opinion, Sal, no more impressive in 23 with a new coordinator and a new passing game than he was in 22. What do you think?
Well, 2 things. The loss of Trayvon Diggs was big. That was a huge deal. Secondly, they've only beaten the Jets, the Giants, and the Patriots. They've steamrolled 3 really bad teams.
Right.
Jonathan Gannon, who owned Dak Prescott when he was the defensive coordinator in Philadelphia, beat them in Arizona.
Right.
San Francisco's just too good defensively on all 3 levels with Bosa. And, of course, Fred Warner, who's the best covered linebacker and sideline-to-sideline guy like Derek Brooks. And their secondary has so much depth and strength and speed. The last time they played, Dallas scored what? 12 points?
Yeah.
12.
I know. I don't like the Cowboys' chances here at all.
No, I don't either
in this game. And I think the Eagles. I think the Eagles are clearly the best team in the NFC. I want to talk about the Cowboys. Now, you're right. They lost Diggs. That's a big loss. But I thought all the talk about Dallas maybe being the best team in the NFC East was way premature. I don't think Prescott's that good. I don't. And I think the Cowboys are going to – I think, Sal, they're a 10-win team, 10-11 team, maybe win team, but only because of the schedule, like you were saying. Sal, most disappointing team so far through that quarter poll that you were referring to. Cincinnati, the New York Giants, Minnesota, Chicago, Denver. Give me the team you think has been worst coming out of the gate versus expectations.
Well, Pat, for me, it's Chicago. I thought that Fields would use what he learned last year and get better. I thought what Ryan Pace, their GM, did with their front 7 would make them a better team. To me, they are a disaster. I never thought Denver would be good. The Giants just don't have enough talent around Daniel Jones, and with Saquon Barkley hurt, the Giants are in free fall. I think their season is over, honestly. I think the Giants' season is over.
About that, yeah.
I think Washington will finish ahead of the Giants. Yeah. So I think Chicago, once Joe Burrow got hurt with that calf injury, you knew the first 4 or 5 weeks were going to be difficult. Now, do they have enough to catch Baltimore? I don't know. I don't know if they have enough to catch Baltimore. Baltimore wins in Pittsburgh this week. I don't think anybody in that division has enough to catch Baltimore as long as Lamar Jackson stays healthy. They're second. Baltimore's second in the league in rushing attempts and top 5 in scoring defense and points allowed. That is just what they like to do. They did it when they won the Super Bowl with Trent Dilfer. They did it when they won the Super Bowl with Joe Flacco. That is their formula. Rushing attempts, number 1, top 5 in points allowed. A quarterback, don't make mistakes. Baltimore, in my opinion, it's Buffalo 1, Baltimore 2, Miami, Kansas City 3 and 4 right now in the AFC.
Interesting. Sal, maybe during the Eagles bye week, I'd like the chance to talk to you about these quarterbacks. For instance, some of the names you just mentioned. You mentioned the Bears. Justin Fields, Daniel Jones, Kenny Pickett, Mac Jones in New England. These are young quarterbacks who appear, Sal, to have already bounced off their ceiling. Now, that may be premature.
No, I think it's not. I think you're right. And they were all first-round picks.
Yes. Yeah. And it's something systemic going on in the NFL where they're just pushing these quarterbacks out too fast. And they're just.
Pat, let me remind you the name of this show, Pat. As I have reminded you for 20 years.
That's correct.
It's This Week in Pro Football.
Right. That's right. Sal, one other thing before I let you go here is you mentioned that there is an epidemic of injuries going on in the secondary around the league, and in particular here in Philadelphia, where secondary guys are just getting banged up, and a lot of it is due to collisions, due to them having to tackle running backs that are gaining steam. What do you see as causing it, and is there any way around it?
Well, I think it warrants further examination, but when you look around the league, Jets with DJ Reed, Jamal Adams on Monday Night Football, Christian Gonzalez, he's out, Jonathan Jones, so the Patriots are down 2 guys. Tre'Davious White in Buffalo, Trayvon Diggs, I mentioned, the Eagles all over the place, Terrell Edmonds, Zach McPherson, Avonte Maddox, Reed Blankenship. I think if I'm looking at it, I'm looking at 2 factors. Number one, the emphasis on the passing game has put so much pressure on secondary players. That's one. And 2, because they can't tackle up high because of the rules, they got to tackle low. Yeah. Adams was a perfectly good example. He hit Daniel Jones low in the knee, hit him in the head, and he went out. He couldn't even get up. Yeah. And had to leave the field with a concussion. So I think those are 2 major factors. But I think it's warrants further examination for sure around the league. I'm sure coaches are looking at this. I mean, Howie Roseman jumped on Bradley Roby maybe a week too late, but you got to start jumping on guys who might be out there and available because there's going to be a run on secondary players, 100%.
Nothing will shred your team faster the way the game is played today than a thin secondary. You're certainly right. All right, Sal Pal, listen, we're going to be listening Sunday, Pittsburgh hosting Baltimore, Sal doing the color commentary. Very much look forward to hear you on that, and look forward to talking to you again next week. All right, pal? All right, the great Sal Paolantonio joining me. Sal, thank you very much. When we get back, it'll be Sean Green joining us from the left coast. Yeah, I know I've turned Sean into a big Rams fan right now, and I'm sure he'll have a Cooper Kupp jersey on. But we're going to talk to Sean about a couple of games. As I said, they're not a great schedule, so we'll concentrate on Eagles, Rams, and Cowboys 49ers. I'm looking at some props there. We'll do that next on This Week in Pro Football.
Discover the essence of true community banking with First Bank, your trusted partner across eastern Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Their network of branches brings you convenient access to dedicated personal bankers who understand your unique needs. At First Bank, you're not just a customer, you're a valued member of the community. But that's not all. They are excited to join forces with another pillar of the community banking world in eastern Pennsylvania, Malvern Bank. Their team of professionals will fit seamlessly into First Bank's culture of dedication and understanding your financial aspirations to fuel your success. With a deep-rooted commitment to Eastern Pennsylvania, Malvern Bank stands as a testament to community values and unwavering support. Experience the difference of real relationships and dedicated personal bankers. Connect with any member of the team today at our Westchester office, conveniently located at 849 Paoli Pike, or you can call them directly at 484-881-3800. First Bank is an equal opportunity lender and member FDIC. At Whistler Pearlstein LLP, we assemble the most effective team to handle all of your legal needs. There are players and pretenders, but our hustle and heart set us apart. In practice now for over 75 years, we're proud to be one of the most prominent full-service law firms in the Philadelphia region. We offer 17 different areas of practice, including business, corporate, and tax education law, real estate, zoning, and land development, municipal law, and litigation. Our top-rated attorneys and staff are laser-focused on client success. We strive to provide outstanding legal counsel with the highest level of care and consideration. Let us show you the Whistler way. Learn more at WhistlerPearlstein.com or email Michael J. O'Donohue at mod@whistpearl.com. WhistlerPearlstein.com or mod@whistpearl.com.
I want to be a game changer in construction. I want to be able to provide diversity in the workforce, and it starts at the top. I started Rodriguez Construction Group in 2013 with 2 employees, and we're 85 strong today. M&T has been a great partner since day one, providing us the access, the opportunity, the funding to be able to continue our growth. We can change the community in a positive way, one person at a time, one job at a time, and one family at a time. I think M&T Bank is very committed to the community, just like us.
All right, welcome back here this week of Pro Football, presented by Kennedy Ford. Great to have you all with me today as we preview week number 5 in the National Football League. And let's keep it going here with this gentleman out on the left coast, diehard Ram fan that he is, the host of the SGPN podcast, Sean Green. Sean, how you doing, pal?
I'm doing good. Yeah. Up until this week, I've been calling them our Rams because I was higher on them than most people coming into the season.
You certainly are, pal.
Doing a little better than I think most people thought of, like, oh, worst team in the league. They're going to completely bottom out. But, of course, this week, it's all Eagles. It's all go Birds. But, yeah, it should be a good game.
And, you know, it's funny. I remember, too, week 1. I was chiding you on what you thought was a better than expected Tennessee Titan team, and they lay a whooping on the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah,
Sunday, 27-3. So that just goes to tell you, everybody watching here, pay attention to what Sean Green says. He's the E.F. Hutton of the national.
You get some things right, some wrong. I mean, so far the long shot that I feel the best about was Tampa Bay Bucks. Everyone left them for dead, and I gave them out at like 9-1 to win the NFC South, and they're certainly in the mix there so far.
Sure, and look, that's not a strong division, and all I need to say to you is Derek Carr. If the team that's most likely a challenger to Tampa Bay has Derek Carr as the quarterback, then Baker Mayfield has a good shot to be league MVP.
I mean, that was basically my handicap. Like, why should the Saints be this big of favorites? And in the other, you got a rookie quarterback in Carolina. You got an inexperienced quarterback in Desmond Ridder. The Tampa Bay had good defense. Why not Baker, especially considering they were such big underdogs?
That's another name, Sean, you mentioned. I just had Sal Paolantonio, and I was rattling off names to him of second-year quarterbacks like Kenny Pickett and Justin Fields and Mac Jones. Well, Jones might be a third year, but young quarterbacks that appear to have hit their ceiling already. Desmond Ridder is another one. I think Ridder is. I don't think he's the answer. I don't know. Maybe it's too soon if he's the answer in Atlanta. But it seems to me at this point, anyway, that there's a dozen NFL teams with young quarterbacks that probably, when that initial contract runs out, they might take a pass.
Yeah, well, and some of it might be that Atlanta offense. But yeah, you're right. It's interesting because CJ Stroud has looked really good and Anthony Richardson has had some moments, but other than that, especially that second year class, it's tough to think of guys that are really jumping out right now.
And Bryce Young, he's going to have a tough year with Carolina. And I'll tell you what, I bet you that Carolina team, they're not too happy with this because I think they have a better chance to win with Andy Dalton. But they're going to stick with Young. All right, listen, there's a few games, Sean, I wanted to concentrate on with you. I don't think it's a great week 5 slate, but there are a few games I wanted to get your opinion on line-wise. Sal and I were talking about Cowboys-Niners. Niners only a 4. Is that still the number, Sean? 4? Somewhere around there?
I was seeing 3.5 to 4, depending.
That's steals, Sean, for San Francisco. I really do. I think they're going to lay a number on Dallas, as they have in the past, as they did out in Santa Clara last year. I don't think Dak Prescott at this point. I think as a quarterback, I don't think he's as good as Brock Purdy. How do you see this game?
Yeah, no, it's interesting because the Cowboys obviously look good when they're playing inferior competition, but when they step up a level in competition, they've really struggled. And Shanahan really seems to have these Cowboys numbers, especially in the playoffs. You mentioned Brock Purdy. How can you go against Brock Purdy? He hasn't lost a regular season start. He hasn't lost a game where he is finished as the quarterback. So tough to fade them. And I think Christian McCaffrey is actually a really bad matchup for the Cowboys linebackers, because I think you're going to be able to run on them a little bit and even getting him going in the passing game. So I think the Cowboys are going to have their hands full, and it's hard to not like them. 49ers big at home.
That is nothing, Sean. That line should be 5.5 easy. But,
yeah,
I know, but I don't like that. Packers Raiders, Sean, the Monday night game. I think it should be a competitive game. But the Raiders obviously have quarterback issues, even if Jimmy G was okay. He's a game manager at best, I think, Sean. And it helps to be a game manager when you're with the 49ers, when he was. But the Packers team now, disappointing 2-2, Sean, I think.
Yeah.
Coming off a loss to Detroit. My numbers say Green Bay's like a 1 here. No, I see now that, I see that. I see Green Bay 1. I see us maybe up to a 2. Give me your thoughts on this game and where you're leaning.
Yeah, no, I like the Packers. I like the Packers a lot here, actually, especially there's some late news about Devontae Adams not practicing, dealing with a shoulder injury. He's like their entire offense. And any chance – I made the mistake of believing in Josh McDaniels last week that he would stupidly kick a field goal down 7 and cover the 5. I'm not making that mistake again this time. Yeah. I was out on the Raiders before the season, and I haven't seen much from them to really get me off that position. I agree Green Bay has struggled, but now you get Christian Watson and Aaron Jones. They were on a snap count previously. They're not. They're getting their guard back, Elton Jenkins, and they have that mini bye, the Thursday to Monday, that extra rest, maybe straighten things out. And, of course, it is going to look like Lambeau Field there in Las Vegas. So I think this is, to me, kind of feels like the Steelers Raiders game a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. It's funny, Sean. One day you and I maybe we'll talk about those 4 venues, Vegas, Arizona, and the 2 LA teams that have no home field advantage.
Yeah, what's the point?
And whether the league cares. Maybe the league doesn't care because the tickets sell anyway. It's just the road team who's buying them. So I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I always said they should build a stadium in Vegas, but that should be the neutral site stadium. Every team gets 8 home games, 8 away games, 1 game in Vegas. Then keep the Raiders in LA or Oakland, wherever they have fans.
Right.
But yeah, they gotta make things complicated.
Commissioner Sean Green.
Yes.
The one other game I wanted, 2 others. I'm saving the Eagles game for last, Sean. The Giants are averaging 11 points a game. They go to Miami. God forbid the Giants, who seem to be coming apart here, now go to Miami to play a team that's averaging 37 points a game and has the number 1 offense in the league. Miami's an 11-point number here as I see it. Sean, give me your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, and Miami's coming off a loss, which you always, if you're a team coming off a loss, you're a good team at home. Man, I mean, there was just such poor tackling from that Giants team who played on Monday night. Now they have a short week going down to Florida. It's really, if you're trying to talk yourself into the Giants, I would say this is the angle that they've really backed themselves into a corner. They're a desperate team, but I haven't seen a lot of fight out of this Giants team. There also is the trend, which usually I abide by. I'm fading it this week by taking the Dolphins, but if a team underperforms the spread by 21 points, like the Giants did, and they're getting points the next week, like they are this week, you should take them historically. It's like 60, 65%, but I can't do it. I'm hoping it's the 35% because I wouldn't bet on the Giants with your money, Pat. I want no part of this team.
If you're leaning on the Giants this week, your name must be like Stanley Dable. I mean, you must be a direct relation to the Giants coach who looked like he was just going to leave.
Oh, man, he was throwing the tablet?
Oh, God, he's throwing the tablet. Jones isn't talking to him. Jones walks right by him. What a disastrous start for the New York Giants. All right, let's get to the Eagles and the Rams. Sean, I'll tell you this. I'm surprised. I think that number should be bigger. There's no home field advantage for Los Angeles there, so don't give me the 3 points they normally would get. I think that's off the table. And I mentioned to Sal The Eagles haven't played a 2022 game yet. They haven't played a full-blown, well-rounded, all cylinders clicking game. I wonder if it's not going to happen here. I like the Eagles with this number.
Yeah, I'm high on the Eagles coming into this. I think their defensive line had kind of a little down game, at least for how high of a standard they had. And you saw it against the Commanders. Jalen Hurts in the passing game, I think, finally got going. So I think they're going to be able to put up some points against this Rams defense. And our boy Matt Stafford dealing with a hip contusion there, and it's going to be about pain management. I mean, part of the reason why I thought he's been successful is that he seems really spry in the pocket, sliding around, stepping up, being able to make some of those throws downfield. I think if his mobility is limited at all, I think it's going to make for a long day for him. So yeah, I think this number is a little short because, again, the Rams are exceeding expectations, and while the Eagles are 4-0, people are expecting like bigger wins, crazier numbers. And the Eagles are just, to your point, they've had good games, but it's not the offense and defensive playing great at the same time. It's kind of almost alternating.
Sean Green, presented by the good folks at Live Hotel Restaurant Casino. You're right. They haven't put it together. It'll be interesting to see if it's this week. I like the Eagles there, Sean. Are there any props? Are you doubling down on Jalen Hurts anytime touchdown this week, or what else do you like? Maybe.
Yeah, well, they're slowly getting smart. Now it's at -130, but I do like, if you're looking for some longer shot stuff, I do think Dallas Goedert at +260 to get a touchdown. He has just been dead, and I think of the big three, the pass catchers, him, Devonta, and Dallas. Dallas Goedert only has 88 receiving yards. It's been a weird, and I maybe talked to it about Bruni when you talk fantasy, but like no tight ends have been having good statistical games. I think maybe they figure out a way to get Dallas Goedert, reward him because he's doing a bunch of great blocking on the line. So I like Dallas Goedert touchdown, and then you can find this in some shops. Matt Stafford to have a fumble. Now, the Eagles lead the league in generating and recovering fumbles. Matt Stafford has yet to fumble this season, so I think maybe he's due for a little strip sack. You can get that one around 3-1.
Now, is that a lost fumble or just fumbles the ball regardless of who recovers it?
Oh, you know what? I think it's I'll double check that, but I'm pretty sure it's I think you have to successfully recover, but I'm sure there's a difference in the price, and that's a good point too. I like both of them. I like them to strip it and recover.
Back to your point though about the Dallas Goedert. I think the Eagles have satiated AJ Brown. AJ threw his temper tantrum, but then they featured him last week. He had an enormous game, so I guess now they don't have to worry about him going berserk on the sideline. Maybe they go. Maybe they
wheel gets the grease.
That's true. Goddard should be raising holy hell.
Yeah,
and then maybe he'll get a TD out of it. But all right, Sean, where does everybody find the great Sean Green? I know you're all over the place. You probably hit deep too in the major league, in the MLB playoffs too, right?
Oh yeah. Well, we have on our network. We have the baseball gambling podcast. So check that out if you're looking for some MLB picks. I'm just riding with the Phillies. Red October. Let's go. And yeah, Sports Gambling Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, or just check us out, sportsgamblingpodcast.com. And hey, if you're an Eagles fan, you're going to the Rams game, hit me up because I'm also going.
Sean will be the one in the Cooper Cup jersey. Hey, Sean, I'm a little annoyed there talking about the Phillies for a minute. The Phillies should be playing the Dodgers. MLB does not reseed after that initial round. I think that's ridiculous. What do you mean you don't reseed? You should do it. The Phillies had a better season than the Diamondbacks. The Phillies should be able to avoid the Braves until the NLCS. Don't you agree?
Yeah, no, I never understand not reseeding. The whole point of having the higher seed is that you're always playing the weaker opponent left, right? It doesn't make any sense, although for my marriage sake, I'm glad they're not playing because my wife's a huge Dodgers fan. So create some tension in the house when they play each other.
She a Rams fan too, I hope, Sean?
No. She kind of grew up outside of LA. Wasn't really into football. I got her brainwashed into the Eagles. So, and I'll don't tell anyone, but I will root for the Dodgers if they're not playing the Phillies. So.
All right. The great Sean Green. Sean, thanks a lot. Appreciate it very much. We'll talk to you next week. All right.
All right. Thanks for having me, Pat.
All right. Sean Green joining me here. Thank you very much to Sean. I see Justin Bruni is lined up to tell you who's going to break out this week? And is it going to be, are the Bengals really due to finally break out? Last week, Justin and I talked about Justin Fields. He said to stick with him. Look, hey, you got rewarded if you did it. We'll see what else Justin has on his mind. We'll talk some fantasy football next on This Week in Pro Football, presented by Kennedy Ford.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let JAKIB Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio, or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call JAKIB Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
John Kennedy Ford. Their reputation sounded too good to be true, so my partner and I decided to do a little digging.
They know we can see them, right?
We could get them a great deal if they just come inside.
They made us. Run! Uncovering a better car buying experience is easy at John Kennedy Ford. Enjoy your ride.
Johnny Apple's Restaurant and Bar opened in 2001 and for over 20 years has been serving great food and good times to Bucks County residents, friends, and family. Ideally located at 184 Buck Road in Holland, Johnny Apple's offers a terrific array of steaks, seafood, and daily specials. They also host private parties and affairs of any size. For excellent food, great company, and a relaxed lunch or dinner, check out Johnny Apple's Restaurant at 215-953-9900 or at johnnyapplesrestaurant.com.
Welcome back. This Week in Pro Football, presented by Kennedy Ford. Let's bring this guy on right now, the fantasy guru for SGPN. That'd be the great Justin Bruni. Justin, how you doing, pal?
Doing good. Happy to be here. Happy Thursday. Happy week 5. How you doing, sir?
I see you're learning your ABCs. I think that's terrific, Justin.
It's October. Yeah, I got to throw out the Halloween theme a little bit.
Next week we'll do numbers, and I have high hopes for you. I really do. All right, Justin, I want to start with a little levity here. I just want you – I'm just amazed. I mentioned this to you last week, like one of the fantasy sources I use and their top 10 quarterback list. I assume you do rankings and things like that, obviously, right?
Yep.
I want you to tell me, out of these 4 quarterbacks, how you have them ranked. Slinging Sammy Howell of Washington, Joshua Dobbs, and then let's throw in Dak Prescott and Joe Burrow. Now, for this week, week 5, how would you rank those 4 guys, 1 through 4?
Who was the second name you said after Howell?
I said Joshua Dobbs.
I would still probably put Dobbs at the bottom. When you look at his production, it's definitely been better than Dak Prescott, and he has a decent matchup up against Cincinnati. So Cincinnati and the Cardinals are playing each other. So Burrow and Dobbs are going to face off this week. But I like Cincinnati's pass rushing a lot. Like, I think that they're going to get to the quarterback, and I still believe in Burrow, right? Like, I'm not going to fade him unless I'm just super desperate. Like, I'm a 1-4 team. I'm a 1-3 team, and that may very well be likely, but I'm not searching the waiver wire to replace Joe Burrow unless it's like a very good option, like maybe like a CJ Stroud, who's been playing very well, has a very safe floor, it feels like, after the past 3 games. So I will go Howell because he's playing the second worst defense in the NFL right now. My Chicago Bears playing tonight. So I do believe that Howell is a must start. And then I will go Burrow, Dak, and Dobbs.
Fair enough. By the way, great time for the Bears PR people to put out that post of the 5 guys standing there and ask it to name a boy band. Give us a boy band name. Boy, you talk about bad time.
You saw they also got ripped off for like $100,000 in team equipment.
Oh, did they really?
The stadium was broken into. Yeah, things are not going well right now.
It's funny. Chicago and New York. And the league, Justin, continues. The Giants have been on national TV 3 times, and they're going to be on again next week, a Sunday night game against Buffalo. For God's sake, at Buffalo. Oh my God!
I don't get it. I mean, a lot of hype around that team in the preseason. Put an APB out for Darren Waller. All I could hear all offseason was how he was unguardable in practice. We had to take him off the field so Dan would throw to someone else. Dan can't find him now. Dan doesn't know where Waller is.
Yes, apparently he has not returned. So, but the Giants look a mess. The Bears look a mess, even though offensively Fields did respond last week. But let me circle back to the Bengals, Justin. I'm a believer in football psychology. Cincinnati, a disastrous game last week. Now they travel to the West Coast. They're away from the Cincinnati media, whatever that's about. But they get to close ranks. They're playing a team that's not that great a team. Is this a week possibly that the Bengals get it together as a team and as a fantasy group?
I'm all in. Yes, 1,000%. The Cardinals have allowed the 7th most fantasy points allowed to the quarterback position. If it's not now, I don't know when. I will be honest with you. I was not high on Cincinnati last week. I took the Titans to cover and beat them. And that's because the best way to, beat Joe Burrow, even when he's, on a bad calf, is to keep him off the field. Yeah. You'll look at the 2 games where he actually played okay, weeks 2 and 3. He had over 40 passing attempts. When he was playing teams like Cleveland and the Titans in weeks 1 and 4, those other offenses were doing their best effort to keep the Bengals offense on the sideline. That's the best way to beat them. Just heads up, not taking into consideration any fantasy. But I believe it was in week 2, he had 49, or no, in week 3, he had 49 passing attempts. In week 2, he had 2 passing touchdowns and 41 passing attempts. This is a game where I feel like he's going to get that volume just based off of the fact I still don't believe the Cardinals will stay on the field much themselves. Like, I don't firmly believe in their offense. Josh Dobbs has been a nice flash in the pan so far, but I don't know how long he can keep it up, how long he can maintain it. I've described him before as a quarterback off the couch, off the sofa. Yeah, he's learning more as the weeks go on here, but how long can he really maintain this level of production?
Okay. All right. I guess that was one of the things I was going to mention to you was the Arizona passing game. I, too, am very lukewarm about that. I'm not going to overreact to that. You mentioned C.J. Stroud. Houston has a couple of strong receivers. Nico Collins had a big fantasy game last week, and then Tank Dell. You're higher, obviously, on the Texans.
Yeah, I'm definitely feeling good about the Texans right now. That's not to say oh, hey, go let Robert Woods run out in the wild without a leash. That's not what I'm saying. I'm good with Nico Collins. I'm good with Tank Dell. Dalton Schultz was able to get a touchdown last week. So if you're dealing with tight end injuries or bye weeks, I don't hate him as a sneaky option, but I don't love him either. I think you might be able to find someone better. And those running backs, right now, it's very tough to start them. Their offensive line is so bad right now. They cannot stop a cold or catch a cold, whatever the expression is. But that has also helped C.J. Stroud. They've had to pass the ball more because they can't run the ball. The offensive line is just not doing their job. Stroud has over 900 passing yards as a rookie and 0 interceptions. So I like that safe floor from him, and I like some of the top options around him.
I tell you, Justin, the running back position fantasy-wise is a mess right now. People talk about tight end, right? I don't even know why tight end is still a position in fantasy football. I think it should be just 3 wideouts, play whoever you want. But still, but running back, Justin, I mean, the source I'm looking at, Bijan Robinson, 3. He never scores touchdowns. He's the 3rd-ranked running back. Joe Mixon could be maybe a top 10. Kyron Williams of the Rams, he was an afterthought. He was a stash guy. He was an RB4 for you at the start of the season. Right. It's amazing how that position has been laid waste. And if you got Christian McCaffrey, you're smiling like hell because he's a run away.
Well, you typically say that too when you have Nick Chubb or Austin Eckler. These guys have been relatively healthy as well. So it's just one of these years. I thought last year was a relatively healthy year for the running back position. And it's tough because they keep these guys under soft blankets for so long now. Once they do get to real-time, fast football action, if they're not 100% ready or their mind isn't there, you take one wrong turn and there goes your ankle, pal.
I know, and it's funny, isn't it, Justin? 2 weeks ago, if you're a Raheem Mostert owner, you're strutting around like a mummer. And now here we are 2 weeks later, just like that. 2 weeks later, he has a fumble against Buffalo, and now he's demoted. And Devon Achane looks like he's going to be the guy. Now, I'm sure Mostert will still get his carries, but it's amazing.
I'm not too worried about Mostert, but that's a situation where, both guys are second string, both guys are first string. It's just going to be based off of the flow of the game. Maybe somebody fumbles. Achane could fumble the ball, and he might get in the doghouse.
Right.
Jeff Wilson could come back off the IR, and he could have an impactful presence in that running back room. So, I think that the Dolphins, just kind of as a microcosm, that's what the NFL is going to do. They're going to continually try to build a nice running back room where they have some depth and they don't have to lean on a guy, because Christian McCaffrey's, they don't just grow on trees. You know what I mean? Like Austin Eckler, he wasn't a top-toted draft pick by any means. He was a guy that just fell into a very good position behind Melvin Gordon and earned his way up. And that's how we see it with a lot of these guys. Kyrene Williams was kind of an afterthought coming into this season. Now look at him. He's scoring multiple touchdown games. It's crazy.
It is crazy. It is. Just one other thing, Justin, before I let you go, and that is Kansas City, Minnesota. You would think it could be the highest scoring game of the week. Game being played indoors. Do you see the game going along that way? Are you higher? Are you ranking your Chiefs? Even though what Chief wide receivers you would even rank, I don't know. But are you high on your Vikings?
You would probably target Rashee Rice just because he's getting red zone targets as a receiver. The number one receiver, no matter what, for the Chiefs is still Travis Kelce, and he's only going to get healthier. But I don't hate starting Rashee Rice. The only problem is that he's not playing a lot of snaps. He's playing 50% of the snaps. But if you look at his stat lines and you're going, wow, the production that this guy is putting out, per route ran, is pretty incredible. He just needs a little bit more playing time. So in a deeper format, I'm okay firing up Rashee Rice. You probably have some better options.
Okay.
But again, it's also bye weeks, starting in week 5 now, and we got some injuries as well. So
you're going to get a
he
couple
could definitely get in there.
Bye weeks. You're right about that.
But I'm not that interested in. I'm honestly not as high on Jordan Addison per se. I believe that Hawkinson and Justin Jefferson are the top 2 guys there, and the Chiefs' defense is better than people believe. They have a good defensive line. They're getting better at coverage. I believe they're top 5 right now as far as, obviously your defense is only as good as your schedule allows it to be, but I believe they're top 5 right now, not that far off of Dallas. So they've been putting together some good performance on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, Chiefs are still formidable, and they'll be there in January. You're right. All right, Justin, where does everybody find Justin Bruni besides me? I know I could always find you to lament what the hell I'm doing, but where does everybody else find you, especially on Sunday morning?
Yes, sir. Come check me out on our YouTube channel, SGPN Fantasy Football, and you can hit me up on Twitter at SGPNJB with any questions you have, whether it be for the rest of the season, week 5, week 6, etc. Anything you need, I'm here.
All right, big week from Joe Mixon. You guaranteed it, and I appreciate that very much, Justin.
I did.
Talking to you next week. Thanks very much, pal.
Take care. Be good.
All right, Justin Bruni joining me right there. Tough. It can be tough fantasy, but it's funny. A lot of the premier names are not showing up in top 10 fantasy lists anymore. So anyway, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. When we get back, I'm going to be joined by the great Gary Myers. We're going to talk about, those New York Football Giants, and we'll get around the rest of the National Football League. We'll do that next on This Week in Pro Football, presented by Kennedy Ford.
Concrete Cutting Systems Incorporated, the concrete cutting specialists in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. These guys are celebrating their 28th anniversary as the industry leader in the field of concrete cutting and robotic demolition. Any type of concrete cutting or drilling, concrete demolition or interior excavating, call the specialists. Concrete Cutting Systems. They're the only full union concrete cutting company based in Philadelphia. Call the guys today at 215-533-0652. The website is concretecuttingsystems.net. Let's go Eagles.
Evolution Energy Partners has helped hundreds of businesses save millions of dollars on their energy spend. They offer electricity and gas procurement strategies, efficiency audits and engineering and financing solutions, as well as online utility bill management. To learn how your business can save, visit www.evolutionep.com or contact Chuck Herschella at 610-329-8288. Evolution Energy Partners, energy solutions to improve your bottom line.
welcome back this week in Pro Football, presented by Kennedy Ford. Pat Callahan joining you here as we wrap up our Week 5 show. We're going to do it with a grizzled veteran, that gentleman who's written a number of books about the National Football League. His latest is called Once a Giant. I want everybody to go out and get that. The guy was one of the first on Inside the NFL, and a veteran columnist with the Daily News and the Dallas Morning News, Gary Myers. How you doing, Gary?
Grizzled, huh?
Grizzled. I'm afraid so, Gary. You and I are officially grizzled. All right.
I like that logo that you have. You didn't have that last year. Get off my lawn.
Yes, get off my lawn is right, Gary. All right. I'm afraid that's where we are too.
I think so. But it's all right.
Huh?
I said that's all right. We have that perspective that allows us to tell people stuff that they say.
That's correct.
Get off my lawn.
That's right. We can get rid of the filter. Gary, how's the book going? The sales, I hope, are doing well. I know some great testimonials coming in. Things going well?
Yeah, it's selling really well, and I'm appreciative of anybody who's bought it and read it. And it's about life after football for the 86 Giants. And, one thing I want to mention, because I assume most of the audience here are Eagle fans, that this book could have easily been about the 86 Eagles or the 86 Bears or the 86 anybody.
Right.
It really tells a story of what's happened to players from that generation.
Right.
And the toll that playing such a physical sport at the highest level, what kind of challenges that's presented to them in their post-football life, both, physically and mentally. And financially as well, because the health insurance hasn't been very good, and these guys didn't make the kind of money that they made that they're making now. So when they get presented with these huge bills, the money's not always there. But
I know, and it was also a time, Gary, when the league was not nearly as focused on player safety as it is now, and many more of the surfaces were artificial surfaces with just over concrete. So you're right. It was a much tougher game to play physically than I think it even is now, even though it's no walk in the park now, but it's a great book. I want everybody to go get it.
Thanks for saying that. I appreciate that.
All right, Gary, we go from the highs of New York football to the lows. I just want you to tell me, how have the Giants, 10 months ago, they go into Minnesota, they win a wild card playoff game, and the future's so bright they got to wear shades. 10 months later, what has gone so wrong in New York football so fast?
Well, it's funny. I tell people that my book is therapy for Giant fans, because they can read about actually a good team from 1986. I think what we lost sight of is the Giants won an awful lot of close games last year. And then the playoff game they won in Minnesota, was against a team that pretty much didn't play any defense. And so, Daniel Jones looked like Patrick Mahomes in that game. And then they came into Philadelphia next week and got the doors blown off, which I think was a truer representation of really where that team was at versus how well they played against the Vikings. They came back with what we thought was, better talent from top to bottom. They had, I think they should have signed Julian Love, one of their safety, who's really a team leader, and I think they miss him. But you can't say that's the reason that they look like they've looked. I mean, the opener against Dallas, and then the game the other night against Seattle, were two of the most pitiful performances I've ever seen the Giants put on. And I've been watching them professionally since 1978, and as a football fan, a lot longer than that. But especially the game Sunday night, Pat, I mean, you can't think of anything they did well in that game. It looked like this team went from the link, losing that playoff game, and the next time they showed up together as a group was the season opener against Dallas, with nothing in between. Because this team just has not looked like it was ready to start the season. I put a lot of that on the changes in training camp, with very little hitting in practice. You pretty much have to get a note from the commissioner to put them in pads. And so many teams are just not ready.
I know.
When the season starts.
You're right, Gary. All right, so let me segue from that then into There's some other 1-3 teams. And I'm just going to state the name, and I want you to tell me whether they can turn this season around.
Okay.
It really looks bleak for the Giants, but Cincinnati 1-3 going to Arizona. I posit to you, Gary, that the Bengals, this could be a get-right game for them. They get away from their negative media. They get a chance to circle the wagons 2,000 miles away. Can the Bengals turn it around?
Yeah, it's funny to get away from the negative media in Cincinnati.
I know. I don't even know. I don't know what kind of media there is in Cincinnati.
I mean,
it's got to be negative.
Spend a couple of days here reading what's going on with the Giants, and you think that the Bengals were 4-0 comparatively. No, as far as the Giants season being over, just remember next 2 weeks at Miami, at Buffalo.
I know.
So, I mean,
on Sunday night too. They're back on national TV again next week against Buffalo. Holy hell!
I mean, they really went all in on the Giants this year with national TV. But yeah, I agree with you. I believe after they play Arizona, they have Seattle at home, which the Giants made look like a Super Bowl champion last week. But Seattle's not that good. I don't care what he does the rest of his career. I guess we'll never believe in Geno Smith because I watched him for a few years with the Jets. But yeah, so my concern with the Bengals is that this is a team that is ready to implode. Jamar Chase has been getting tons of targets, and he was complaining after the game the other day that he's open on every play.
I know, I heard that.
And I don't think there was a direct shot at his buddy Joe Burrow because Joe's made him an awful lot of money by throwing to him so much at LSU. But you just feel, and Higgins might not play, he fractured some ribs. You feel because the expectations for this team was so great.
I know.
That if they happen to lose to just a god-awful Arizona team on Sunday, that
it could
get really ugly.
Right, it could get really ugly there. Speaking of ugly, the Las Vegas Raiders 1-3. They host Green Bay. I think that's a dangerous game for the Raiders. I think the Packers are starting to get a little much healthier now, and especially at the skill positions. And I don't like the Raiders anyway. So is there any chance the Raiders get this ship right in time to make any type of noise come December?
Now, I have not heard yet, maybe you have, is about Garoppolo and whether he's going to be playing on Sunday.
Allegedly. He's trending towards playing. I'm not sure how significant that is, but Devontae Adams now has a shoulder injury, and that is death to the Raiders if he's not there.
Yeah, and you figure that Adams would be super motivated going against his old team.
Right.
I think the problem with the Raiders is the fact that their head coach was a great offensive coordinator when he had Tom Brady, and in the rest of his coaching career, he hasn't done a darn thing, and he's just not a good head coach.
Yeah,
that team in Denver, he didn't even last 2 seasons in Denver, and now he's in the middle of his second season with the Raiders. Have we seen anything from Josh McDaniels that leads you to believe that he can be a winning head coach? He's from the Belichick tree. You all do well with Belichick because of Belichick, and you can just name a bunch of them that have gone out on their own and fallen on their faces, and that includes executives as well. So I don't know. I think that I think the Raiders are a really tenuous position. The best quarterback in the Raiders organization is their minority owner, whose name is Tom Brady.
Right.
And I don't think he's going to be playing for him.
Gary, the other there's 2 other teams I wanted to mention. One being now the Vikings finally get a win, not an impressive one, but they get it. 1-3, and now they're home, but unfortunately they're home to Kansas City.
Yeah.
Can Minnesota pull this game off and stay relevant, or are they going to end up 1-4 playing the Super Bowl game?
Well, as the NFL has been so quick to point out, the Chiefs are undefeated now that they have the Swifties with them.
I know.
Now I don't know if she's going to Minneapolis. If she's ever going to go to Minneapolis, now she was there for a concert a few weeks ago, or back in June. But if she's ever going to go to Minneapolis for a game, now it's an indoor stadium, but you still got to be outside at some point. Now's the time to go,
right
before the winter hits in Minnesota.
Right.
But no, I think that the Vikings are another one, a really disappointing team because I'm not sold on the Lions. So I thought the Vikings it would be the Vikings and the Lions this year.
I thought you'd have a battle between the Lions, Packers, and
I can't even remember who the Vikings beat last week, but
Carolina.
Carolina. So that doesn't really count.
No, it doesn't. They barely won the game, Gary. So
Yeah, that's right.
I think you're right. I think the jury's definitely out on Minnesota, but it doesn't look good. Now,
I was going to say the most interesting thing about the Vikings is if they don't get this thing turned around, and then the trade deadline is October 31st, and there's been so much stuff before training camp that this is Kirk Cousins' last year.
Yeah.
The Vikings. Now, I don't know who they plan to replace him with,
right?
But if they're like 1-5 or 6 or whatever it would be at that time of the deadline, would they trade Cousins now to get something for him?
Yeah. I think the answer to that would be yes.
Yeah.
He said, look long and hard at it. The last team, Gary, I want to mention or have you discourse on is the New England Patriots. You mentioned Belichick. I talked to Sal Pao about this a little while ago, and the way I phrased it to Sal was, is Belichick out of his magic tricks? I mean, they were awful last week against Dallas. And it just looks like, I mean, I don't see any talent at the quarterback position. I see no talent at the wide receiver position. And that's where the game is played these days. Is New England. I don't think New England's going to stay relevant in that AFC East at all. Do you see any chance for the Pats?
Unless Mac Jones the light bulb goes on. I mean, talk about a quarterback who regressed. He made the playoffs his rookie year.
Right.
And then Belichick, for whatever reason, a second-year quarterback, he has a defensive coordinator and a special teams coordinator as his offensive coaches last year, Matt Patricia and Joe Judge. And I think I can't say he did irreparable harm to Jones because he's too young a player to say that about. But he's certainly he took a huge step backwards last year, Pat. And bringing in Bill O'Brien is something that Belichick should have done last year.
Right.
To replace McDaniels. Right. And you'd have to say at this point that O'Brien has not had much of an impact, if any, maybe even a negative impact. Who knows? But Jones just looks lost.
He really does.
And,
he really does look lost, and he doesn't look well schooled at all. Though that pass across the field was an utter disaster right before halftime.
Yeah.
And I don't see good things happening in New England at all. Let me ask you, you know Bill Belichick. You've spoken with him probably dozens, if not 100 times.
Yeah.
Does he still? You think he still enjoys what he's doing? What's driving him right now? Because I got to tell you, Gary, the more that he hangs in with the Patriots, so do you think, for instance, he's trying to get that record from Don Shula?
You were asking me what drives him. That's what I was going to say. That at this point, I mean, he's smart enough to realize that he's got a team that's a ways away from being serious Super Bowl contenders. I mean, who knows when that's going to happen?
Right.
It took the magic of Tom Brady, a once in a lifetime story for Belichick to become a winning NFL head coach after what happened in Cleveland, and now it's happened post Brady.
Right.
I think is he 18 behind Shula now? That's including playoffs. I think it's 18.
Yeah.
And going into the season, it was 19, and we figured, okay, he's 2 years away.
Whether 2 years just by going 10 and 7 or 8.
Yeah. And now you look at it and you wonder. Now I haven't spoken to Bill about this, so I don't know what his thought process is. But that he wants that record. I mean, why wouldn't he want that record?
Of course.
But I also wonder, and this is pure conjecture on my part, so I'm not starting a rumor or anything like that. But if this season goes really bad, say like 3-14 or 4-13 bad,
right?
What does Robert Kraft do?
Yeah.
And if they have that kind of record, that means that Jones has played really poorly through the course of the season. Maybe he puts him in a position to get a high draft pick and take a quarterback next year.
Yeah.
But is Kraft going to want Belichick being the one to develop him? I just think that the worse this gets in New England, the more questions are going to come up about Belichick. I mean, he's been there forever. It's still very hard for me to imagine Kraft calling Belichick in and saying, I want to go another direction. I can't.
That's the thing. Yeah. It would be terrible to see Bill Belichick go out on any terms other than his own.
Yeah,
but he's brought that into play. by hanging around and staking everything really on Mac Jones. I don't think Jones is up to it. You're right. It'll be very interesting to see what goes on.
Let me ask you this, because I know we probably have to go. Say he gets fired at the end of this year.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Does somebody else hire him?
I wonder if he comes out, Gary, and says, "I still want to coach. I still want to coach." Boy, I don't know. I could see somebody doing it, assuming that the Cowboys struggle again this year. I could think right away. I think of the one most likely to do it if Dallas ends up short again. But I don't, Gary, I don't see a lot of candidates who would do it because let's face it, there's a lot of owners with big egos, and that's a taciturn guy coming in there. So I don't know. Gary, I wouldn't think so. I think Belichick hopefully goes out on his own terms in New England, and it could be, as you're saying, buddy.
Let me just throw one at you, and this will never happen, but it would be funny. Just say the Jets are this year. I mean, bad enough to get Saleh fired. Okay.
Right.
And then, but Rodgers comes back next year. He's healthy and he's coming back.
Yeah.
Can you see Belichick saying, I'm Woody, I didn't when I quit on you. I didn't know about you.
Yeah.
You seem like an okay guy.
Yeah, let's make
it. Aaron Rodgers together for a year.
Oh God!
How great a story
that would be a story. That would be a story, Gary. And I know you'd be right there at the forefront of another book coming out. Once a Jet. Once a Jet by Gary Myers.
Someone said to me, "When are you gonna do a book on the Jets?" And I'm gonna say, "I'm gonna call it Once a Jet." Aaron Rodgers 4 plays with the Jets.
All right, well done. The book is called Once a Giant. I want everybody to go get it. The great Gary Myers. Gary, look forward to talking to you again real soon. All right, thanks again.
All right, Pat, thanks a lot.
All right, the great Gary Myers joining me there. And very interesting, the New England Patriots and what's going to happen there. It'd be a real shame if Bill Belichick, a guy like that with that legacy, overstays his welcome in New England. All right, listen, we're going to wrap it up right here. I think the Eagles win 34-17. I think the Eagles get into the 30-point range. I just think the Rams are the talent-wise, it's just not there. Eagles 34, Rams 17. My prediction for that game. I want to thank everybody, Sal Pao, Sean Green, Justin Bruni, Gary Myers for joining me. I want to thank you for watching, Xander Krause for producing. Make sure you give me a follow on X at TWIPF Pat. You can follow the network at JAKIB Sports. That's it for this week in pro football for week number 5. We'll talk to you again next week.